Welcome to this week's QuiX, quick video chapels to help us stay connected and one of the ways we are living into our Christ-centered identity. This week's message delivered by Pastor Carlos Fernandez.
You're the beautiful one. We love your name. I love your name. We love your name. Jesus, you're the beautiful one. We love your name. I will love your name. We love your name. Jesus, you're the beautiful one. We love your name. I will love you, King of Kings. I will love you, Lord of Lords. I will love you, King of Kings. I will love you, Lord of Lords. Glory, glory to the righteous one. Glory, glory to the righteous one. Glory to the righteous one.
Hey Warner, how y'all doing? It's good to be with you. I want to thank Michelle for another opportunity to share a few words with you all, and I want to thank your student worship leaders who do such a beautiful job week after week of bringing us into the presence of Jesus with their music and voices. And so thank you for inviting me into that sacred space. The last few weeks have been really hard. Yeah? I know it's been a challenge for me. I miss hugs. I'm an introvert and I miss people. And the last several weeks have completely redefined the way that we live, and many of us live with a daily anxiety to return to some level of normalcy. And it's fascinating to me that these limitations arrived during the season of Lent, a season that is normally characterized for the Christian community of going without. And normally, Lent culminates with the celebration of Easter and new life, and we go through the period of fasting and end with a time of feasting. And while we did get to celebrate Easter as the church last week, as we're going through this pandemic, there's no set date of when this will come to an end, and that can produce a lot of anxiety. I know the current season has required me to take on a job that I would have not expected to find myself in during this season. I'm working part-time at a bakery at a grocery store downtown, and this creates some anxiety in my family as I'm coming into regular interaction with lots and lots of strangers. I've got 2 kids at home, and growing up, ever since they were toddlers, we have a routine at bedtime that's called sing a song and pray. And over the years, as they've grown up, that's been somewhat modified. For my 10-year-old son, Sing a Song and Pray has now morphed into karaoke on Dad's phone. And if I'm getting my way, it's going to be a Prince song. But if he's choosing, it's going to be Harry Styles or Johnny Cash. And I know that's a random pairing, but that's what it is. And a week or so ago, I was coming home from a long shift at the grocery store. And they were in bed, still awake, waiting to do Sing a Song and Pray. And so I rushed up the stairs to my son's bedroom first. And he pulls the covers over his head and says, "No, Dad, you're not clean. You have to change your clothes and take a shower first." And he wasn't wrong. I'm just not accustomed to these new rhythms yet. And all cultures have some type of understood hygienic regulations. We all learned as kids when it was proper to wash our hands and that we needed to bathe regularly. And earlier societies, prior to modern medicine, had strict codes about what you could and couldn't touch to protect you from impurity, from uncleanliness. And these didn't originate out of a need for legalism, but to keep people safe, to prevent people from getting sick. And so this season reminded me of a story that I love in the Gospels, a sort of a double story that I'm going to read out of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, beginning at verse 40. And it says, "On his return, Jesus was welcomed by a crowd. They were all there expecting him. A man came up, Jairus by name, and he was president of the meeting place. And he fell at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his home because his 12-year-old daughter, his only child, was dying. And Jesus went with him, making his way through the pushing, jostling crowd. In the crowd that day, there was a woman who for 12 years had been afflicted with hemorrhages. She had spent every penny she had on doctors, but not one had been able to help her. She slipped in from behind and touched the edge of Jesus' robe. At that very moment, her hemorrhaging stopped. And Jesus said, 'Who touched me?' When no one stepped forward, Peter said, 'Master, we've got crowds of people on our hands. Dozens have touched you.' But Jesus insisted, 'No, someone touched me. I felt power discharging from me.' And when the woman realized that she couldn't remain hidden, she knelt, trembling, before him. In front of all the people, she blurted out her story, why she touched him, and how at that same moment she was healed. And Jesus said, 'Daughter, you took a risk trusting me, and now you're healed and whole. Live well, live blessed.' And while he was still talking, someone from the leader's house came up and told him, 'Your daughter died. No need now to bother the teacher.' And Jesus overheard and said, 'Don't be upset. Trust me, everything's going to be all right.' And going into the house, he wouldn't let anyone enter with him except Peter, John, James, and the child's parents. Everyone was crying and carrying on over her. And Jesus said, 'Don't cry. She didn't die. She's sleeping.' And they laughed at him. They knew she was dead. Then Jesus, gripping her hand, calls her and says, 'My dear child, get up. Talitha cum.' She was up in an instant, up and breathing again, and he told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were ecstatic, but Jesus warned them to be quiet. 'Don't tell a soul what happened in this room.' Two things happened in this story. Jesus is touched by a hemorrhaging woman and then goes out of his way to touch a corpse. These things would have topped the list in a culture of things that make you unclean. And no Jew would have missed that point in hearing this story. In this scenario, Jesus would have become doubly unclean. He would have had to bathe himself and his clothes and wait until the next day before resuming contact with people. And it's a suspenseful story as the tension switches from this grieving father to this older woman who, while knowing she is making everyone in her path unclean, still ignores all social distancing regulations and pushes her way through to touch Jesus. And I love how the theologian N.T. Wright captures the moment, saying that her uncleanliness doesn't infect him. Something in him, something in Jesus infects her. Jesus turns to her and says, "Your faith has made you whole. It has healed you. It has rescued you. It has saved you." And she was instantly healed. And yes, as we're living in this current season, we want this to all come to an end. We want to be with our loved ones. We want to return to our jobs. We want to return to a sense of normalcy. But we can't lose sight of our ultimate call and mission. The work that Jesus was up to was more than just about physical healing. It was about rescuing, restoring, and redeeming the whole of creation. And as God's people, we're invited to participate in this redemption. I so admire people that are on the front lines, nurses, EMT, medical workers, those that are working in delivery and grocery stores and food preparation. But we're also witnessing the church having an opportunity to be the church in new and creative ways that we wouldn't have expected, to partner with Jesus in redeeming and restoring the world. We are not called to live in fear, that is true, but that does not grant us the permission to live foolishly or to carelessly endanger others. Be wise. We know that God also grieves for his world, and that through his Spirit we lament with him. And so I want to close with Wright's language once again, where he says that we can become small shrines where the presence and healing of God can dwell. And out of that can emerge new possibilities, new acts of kindness, new scientific understanding, and new hope. So be kind, friends, and stay safe. Peace be with you.